In this video, I'm going to share what is the most value for money two-room flexi in this BTO launch in my opinion. We are also going to address some of your burning questions such as who is eligible to buy two-room flexi, what is short lease two-room flexi, is it still subjected to subsidy recovery and MOP, and what is the difference between two-room flexi type 1 and type 2. So, which project has the best two-room flexi in this October BTO launch? In general, there's not much difference in picking an apartment in Singapore, whether it's a two-room flexi flat or a four-room flat. It all boils down to location, your preference, and budget. However, the reality is, not all BTO projects would have two-room flexi option. For example, in this October BTO launch, out of the 14 projects, only 10 have two-room flexi flat option. Some viewers here commented, how come Kallang View and Crawford Heights don't have two-room flexi option? Well, the answer is that's really up to HDB. But I do see the tendencies that if the location is really strategic, they may or may not have two-room flexi, but if it's in a non-mature area, usually it does have a two-room flexi option. But then again, even though two-room flexi is not offered in all projects, but there are still some good options such as Central Trio at Ang Mo Kio, Kembangan Wave, etc. Obviously, you need to also consider how far is the project from the nearest MRT station and how far is it from the places that you usually visit. Whether it's family member or relatives that you usually visited, your hangout places, or your workplace if you are still working. But do check what facilities that HDB will build in the cluster. To help you decide, I have summarized what are the facilities that will be available in each cluster. And note that I have excluded things such as preschool, fitness corner, etc. because I want to focus to list down what are the typical relevant features for seniors and mature singles. As you can see, the facility is really different from one project to another. For example, Kembangan Wave will be attached to a healthcare facility, a kidney dialysis center, an eating house, and a supermarket. So it is very convenient, especially if you have mobility limitations. But surprisingly, Central Trio at Ang Mo Kio and West Brickfield at Bukit Batok don't really have many facilities in the cluster. You would have to walk out of the neighborhood to explore. Costa Riviera is also another surprise. It is a huge project, but they will only come with restaurants and cafes. There will be no eating house and no senior care center. But to be fair, this is probably because the project is surrounded by several malls, so I guess it is presumed that you would just visit the amenities in the neighborhood. I think what you need to be careful of is if the area is still underdeveloped, such as the Bayshore area. Bayshore Palms will have an eating house and some shops, and Bayshore Vista will only have a supermarket and an eating house. But if you need anything else, such as a healthcare facility, then you need to travel out until the nearby facilities are fully built. The next challenge to pick a two-room flexi is honestly the lack of comparable resale flat transactions nearby. Because typically, that's how we calculate whether the BTO price is reasonable or not, right? So, you do kind of have to extrapolate it from the trend of other flat types such as the four-room flat. The logic is, if the area is desirable for a four-room flat, then there's a good chance you will also have a healthy pool of buyers for two-room flexi flat. But then again, remember that if you buy two-room flexi on a shorter lease, you can only sell back to HDB. So in this case, price trend does not apply. It's only relevant if you are buying two-room flexi for the full 99-year leasehold. Another thing that I think is sensitive to consider, especially if you are a senior, is how long is the waiting time for the project. Because the time difference can be immense even though they are launched at the same time. For example, the waiting time for Central Trio at Ang Mo Kio is 59 months, which is almost 5 years, whereas the waiting time for Fernvale sales is only 27 months, which is slightly over 2 years, even though both BTO projects were launched in October. In summary, if I use this table as an example, I would say that the best two-room flexi is Kembangan Wave if you want a mature area, or Fernvale sales if you are open-minded for a non-mature area. If you are a senior, don't forget that besides the two-room flexi, now HDB also has the community care apartment such as the one in Merpati Alcove, so this can also be an option for you as well. Okay, let's talk about eligibility. HDB two-room flexi BTO flats are typically meant for single-person households or the elderly. But of course, the flat could also accommodate a couple or a small family. The biggest change is now, singles above the age of 35 will be able to apply for two-room flexi flats in all locations from upcoming BTO launch and not only in the non-mature areas. This leads to our next topic, which is the lease for two-room flexi flats. Turun Flexi is unique because it has the option for a shorter lease term. If you are above the age of 55, then you are eligible to buy the flat at a shorter lease of between 15 to 45 years in 5-year increments. But the lease must cover you or the youngest buyer until the age of 95. So you can't just anyhow pick the lowest lease to pay the cheapest price. The intention is to give retirees an option so that you have more money for retirement instead of having all of your assets locked up in a flat that is now too big for you once all of your kids have already left the house. Another unique thing about the two-room flexi scheme is that Singaporeans above the age of 55 are allowed to apply for it even though you have purchased 2 new flats directly from HDB in the past. However, if you have used up your 2 chances in the past, you can only opt for the short lease option and you have to pay a resale levy adjusted from $30,000 depending on the length of the lease. Please note that your monthly household income should not exceed $14,000. But the interesting part is, they don't take your savings into consideration. So let's say in the past you have a 4-room flat and then you sell it. Let's say you have profited $500,000. Some goes to your CPF, some goes to bank account as savings. But since you are retirees, you don't have a monthly income, which means your monthly income is under $14,000, right? Even though asset-wise, you have quite a lot of money in the bank. So that sounds great, right? So what about singles above the age of 35 but under 55 years old? Well, since you are still in the productive age range, you can only buy two-room flexi flat with the standard 99-year leasehold and your monthly household income ceiling is $7,000 because you are buying it as a single person. Of course, there are other eligibility requirements such as if you are buying the flat with other applicants, then one of you must be a Singaporean citizen, or if you have other HDB flat, then you have to dispose it within 6 months of completing your flat purchase, etc. For more details about eligibility, please do visit the HDB website. Now let's talk about whether or not two-room flexi is subjected to the subsidy recovery or subsidy clawback for prime and plus projects because I know there are a lot of confusion about this. The answer is, it depends. If you are buying two-room flexi on shorter lease, then no, you are not subjected to subsidy recovery. Why? Because you can only sell the flat back to HDB. You cannot sell it in the open market anyway. But remember that only seniors can buy two-room flexi on short lease. On the other hand, if you are buying a two-room flexi with the 99-year leasehold, then yes, you are still subjected to subsidy recovery for plus and prime projects regardless of your age. How much is the subsidy recovery percentage? Well, it depends on the project. For example, if we take a look at the October BTO launch, it ranges between 6 to 8% and it will be calculated against the valuation or transaction price, whichever higher. You might ask, what about the MOP? Is two-room flexi still subjected to the 10-year MOP if it's a plus or a prime project? From HDB's press release, it seems like the answer is yes. I mean, for the 99-year leasehold two-room flexi, right, I think it makes sense if you still have the 10-year MOP. What I'm not so sure about is if it's on a shorter lease term. I couldn't find the straight answer online, but because the HDB's press release about the MOP doesn't specify a breakdown based on the flat type, then I assume it's applicable for all flat types. Let me know if you have more information than I do. Now let's talk about what's the difference between two-room flexi type 1 and type 2. The easiest way to explain is probably with the picture. Here is an example of the typical two-room flexi type 1. As you can see, you have a bedroom, a living room, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a bomb shelter. The size is typically around 38 square meters, which I think is good enough for singles or for a couple. Based on their HDB showroom flat that I have visited in the past, the bedroom can still fit a queen-size bed and a sliding wardrobe, so it's not so bad. But obviously, if you live in a two-room flexi, you have to be well organized as you can rent out of space really quickly. Now, let's take a look at the floor plan of a typical two-room flexi type 2. It's very similar, but the difference is that you have this study room in the flat as well. It's not exactly a second bedroom because typically the size is very small and it won't fit a queen bed or a wardrobe, but it's good enough for a home office or a hobby room, whatever you want to use it for. The size of a two-room flexi type 2 is typically 48 square meters, so probably a couple with a child can still live there. Hopefully this helps. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!